The goal of this video is to identify which trig ratio that we want to use, write the trig ratio equation, and then solve for the unknown value. Okay, let's look at this first one here. So we've got this triangle. This is the value that we want to find, this x over here. So we need to decide which of the trig functions we're going to use by using SOHCAHTOA. In this particular question, the angle is over here on the left, and we have the hypotenuse. That is going to be part of the question and part of the problem we're solving. And we also have this one over here, which is going to be the opposite side. So if we were to list out all the things we have, we've got the opposite side, we have the hypotenuse, and we have the angle. Now, every question that involves one of the trig ratios is going to have an angle in it in some way. The main thing that differentiates is whether we're going to use the opposite hypotenuse, or opposite adjacent for one of these ratios. Now, in this particular question, we have the opposite and the hypotenuse, which means it has to be this one here. If we had the adjacent hypotenuse, we'd use cos. If we had the opposite and adjacent, we use tan. But we have to use the opposite and hypotenuse to solve this problem. If we use one of the other ones, we would have too many unknowns and we wouldn't be able to solve it. You're only allowed to have one thing that's unknown out of the angle and then the two sides in the ratio. All right, let's write out the sine ratio equation. So the general form is that sine of the angle is equal to the opposite over hypotenuse. Again, that comes from SO in SOHCAHTOA, and the fact that the O comes first lets you know that O, or opposite, goes on top of the fraction and hypotenuse goes on the bottom. So sine of the angle is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Let's fill that in. Well, we know what the angle is. It's 30 degrees. We don't know what the opposite side is, but we do know that we want to call it x, and that's what we want to find out. And we know that the hypotenuse is 40. All right. Now, this is just a regular equation that we can solve. So we've got x being divided by 40 here. So we can times both sides by 40 to cancel out the 40. Or alternatively, if you're comfortable doing it, you can just move the 40. You can just move the 40 to the other side of the equation, making sure it is doing the opposite when it gets there. So it was dividing on the right-hand side. It is now multiplying on the left-hand side. This is now ready to go into a calculator. So if we get our calculator, we can type 40 times sine 30, and we get our answer of 20. Fantastic. All right. Now let's have a look at this one here. So in this question, it's the similar problem, same angle, but our side lengths are different. If we have this side over here on the complete opposite side of the triangle to the angle, that's going to make this side over here the opposite side. Now this side here is adjacent to the angle, and it's definitely not the hypotenuse, which would be over here. So this side is going to be the adjacent side. So again, looking at SOHCAHTOA, we can see that we are going to use, we're going to use TOA because we have the opposite side and the adjacent side. We do not have the hypotenuse, which means we cannot use the sine or cos. So let's write it out. We're going to say that tan of theta is equal to opposite over adjacent. And then we're going to fill it in with what we know. We know that the angle is 30 degrees. We know that the opposite side is 10. We don't know the adjacent side, but we do want to know, so we're going to put the x there. All right. Now this is one of those annoying equations where the x is on the denominator, which means we're going to have to get it off the denominator first. So let's do that by just, same as we moved the other number in the last equation, we're going to move the x to the other side. It was dividing on the right, it's now multiplying on the left. We have officially got it off the bottom of the fraction. And then we can just move the tan to the other side. The tan 30 is multiplying the x, so it should be dividing on the other side. So what we end up with is x equals 10 over tan 30. So let's type this into the calculator. We're going to do 10 over tan of 30, and this will give us an error. The reason this is giving us an error is because when it's on the bottom of a fraction, the calculator expects you to close that bracket that started there. So this is our answer here. As you can see, it is not a very nice answer. We've got 17.32. Not every answer you get in trigonometry is going to be a nice number. In fact, for most angles, you're going to get a number that you're going to have to round. All right. Last question, and this is the last type of question that you'll come across, is this one here. This is different to the last two because we actually know both of the sides in this question. The angle is the thing that we don't know. But we're still going to go through the same process. We have the angle, we have the adjacent side, and we have the hypotenuse. So now that we know what sides we have included in the question, we can now decide which one we're going to use. Now, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. We are not using the opposite side at all, so sine and tan are out. So we're going to be using cos for this question. All right, so let's write it out. Cos of theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse. We fill in what we know. So we're going to do cos of the angle. We don't know the angle, so we just leave that as theta. It's going to equal the adjacent side, 8 over the hypotenuse, 16. And now we need to solve it. Now, just like every other question, when we're trying to solve this, we just need to move things to the other side. And this is the most unique out of all the things we're going to be solving. I'm going to leave the theta here. Normally when you move cos theta, you have to move the entire thing. I'm going to leave the theta here and just take the cos to the other side. So if I take the cos to the other side, I obviously can't have it just do the same thing on the other side. It needs to be doing the inverse. So I need to put the little -1 on there to say that that is inverse cos. Now, we can, of course, type that into a calculator. We can do the inverse cos. Now, cos is this button here. The inverse button is above it, written in yellow. So we're going to do shift cos, and then we're going to do our fraction in here. So 8 over 16 equals, and that is our answer, 60. So theta is 60 degrees for this question.